All right, I've been excited for this. Kosciuszko Wild Venison. Adam, thank you for coming and joining the podcast. Mate, I love what you're doing down there and the idea. Where did this all come about?
Matt, thanks for having me on the show. I'm really excited to be here, and it's really started to take off. So the idea came about. My background was media, and I did that for 20-something years. I actually spent my first 10 years of my young adult life living here in the Snowy Mountains because I just came here as a young kid and just loved the place and just knew this is my kind of soul ground. Came down here, worked all sorts of jobs, had a great time. Career in media turned up, went away for 20-something years. Then the whole media landscape changed, and I realised I really don't like doing this anymore, and the city's not my place. And I came back to where I really love living, which is the Snowy Mountains. I came back and stayed a year on a friend's farm, and I'm looking around for something to do, and I realised there's all this deer around, and it tastes pretty good, and it's a problem, and we're dropping it in the field, but we should be really making use of it as a resource. So from that point on, I decided I'm going to process it for human consumption. And it was a good idea at the time. And about 8 months into it, I was thinking, why hasn't anyone done this before? 8 months into it, I realized, right, there's a fair bit more to it than I realized originally. So that's the beginning of the process.
It's big, isn't it? I did my kangaroo harvester course during COVID, and I'm a teacher, and I love learning. And I thought, well, you know what? The government was giving out the free courses. I was like, hey, I'm sitting at home. I've got a heap of time on my hands. This would be a really good thing to learn, skill myself. And, we get a damn lot of holidays. Who knows? Might be able to set up a bit of a side gig. And did the course and then went, whoa, the box on the back of the the setup. Holy crap, this is a big investment.
Yeah, putting all that together.
Yeah, and then you've gone a step further. That's just setting up yourself to do it and do it properly and have your food safety and all that sort of stuff. And I think they just changed the rules with the pins and whatnot. I think they're full Gow now off the top of my head, or stainless. I sort of keep up with it, but it's not something I'm pursuing. And then on top of that, to actually set up and I'm guessing you have a chiller box or you've worked something out there, because that's another element in itself. There's been a couple that have tried and unfortunately not succeeded. So it's a big one.
Yeah. So what I did was I started researching what's going to take to process wild venison. The key role is the meat inspector. So I could have built a model around paying somebody to become that meat inspector, and that would become basically the gateway to getting something through the door and out to the market. That makes you very vulnerable. The person might not stay around, or they would require more funding to be there, motivation, why are they here? I decided I'm going to have to take that role on myself. I've got to create that gateway role for me. So through my registered training organisation, I started doing meat inspector course, and that required me to spend some time on site, on job. And fortuitously, 60 k's from here is an export abattoir, Monbeef, in Cooma. I approached them through the help of my RTO with the idea of a self-funded internship so I can learn from a federal meat inspector and a federal on-plant veterinarian. And it being a manufacturing meat processing plant, you get a lot of older animals, so you see a lot more pathology and physiology than you would in, a table meat factory where they're producing all your Woolworth steaks and things, which are 18 months to 3 years old.
Yep.
They took me on board, and I was just ploughing away there and having a great time. And before you know it, they asked me to become part of the team, and I got offered a job as a quality assurance officer, which I took up, and that was wonderful. They were paying me to get all my qualifications. And I worked there for 2 years and came out at the end of it as a meat inspector. And that was the stepping off point for me to start doing my own thing in venison.
Mate, brilliant. What a good idea. And that's a big shift from media.
Yeah. Funnily enough, I'd been doing a fair bit of stuff for SBS. And on Thursday nights, they have this huge food programming style. And I'd learned a lot about food and restaurateurs and food production and what people are wanting and styles and needs and basically the fashion of food. And I thought, this is one of those sliding door moments that what we have in a field, a problem that can be turned into a resource, which can be turned into a wonderful resource and culture for Australians to enjoy. It's Australia and Antarctica are the only two continents, Australasia and Antarctica, the only two continents that do not have a native species of deer. And so the rest of the world's been dining on it for millennia, but it's an education process here. And once you taste it, you'll understand why the rest of the world's been eating it.
I say that all the time. I have absolutely no idea why we are not doing more of it. I know there's a little bit done with a couple of companies out there, but it's not done like in large, quantities. And I don't get it because it is a sustainable resource. We know that because the numbers are going like crazy.
Yeah.
And you're doing not only a service to help out farmers on the property because the deer obviously compete for food with their livestock. So there's a win there. It's unbelievably good meat. And
it is terrific. It's such a velvety texture.
I love it. And I think that's the one thing that a lot of people that are sort of anti-hunting, sort of that side of it, they haven't really tasted venison. And there's this perception of this gaminess, which just, if done right, if everything done right, it's not there. And it's a different flavor, but I wouldn't say it's gamey. I don't look, I've got little twins and a 5-year-old, and they love it. They're just all over it. And we try and eat as much. I've got to shoot more deer, but I mean, that's they absolutely love it. So I think I also think that's the gateway, right, for the wider acceptance of hunting is people eating, because we all eat, having that food source that's sustainable, renewable in massive quantity, and you're doing an environmental service and helping farmers out. I mean, for me, I can't see any issues at all.
There's a number of factors coming into play here. Let's address the hunting side of things. Hunting implies you've chased something down, cornered it, and killed it. Another layer is there's this disassociation between an animal, a living animal that is now deceased, which becomes a protein source that turns up in your supermarket, ranged on a vacuum-packed cardboard background with green trees and happy cows, and it's a disassociation.
100%.
Like, where does your food come from? So on the harvesting side with venison, we don't hunt because that has a negative effect on the quality of the meat. If the harvesters are doing their job correctly, which is what they absolutely have to do, there's no other way of doing it, the deer has lived its own life, making its own decisions, feeding on what it wants, drinking what it wants, hasn't been husbanded, hasn't been inoculated, herded, trucked, stressed in any way, other than the natural surrounds of maybe a thunderstorm or a dingo, or that'll make it run around. But if they're just feeding away, the harvesters doing their job, that deer will not even know it has been deceased. It will die with a swift bullet through the brain, knocks it out completely, and it dies with a full glycogen level, which is the single most important factor of meat quality. Glycogen equals lactic acid, which equals sweet, tender meat.
And I'd be guessing the process would be the same as the ruse, is that you have to be there within a minute to start the gutting process, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, it's so that minute is more about once you've had a shot to the brain, the heart will go into defibrillation. So it is still pumping erratically. And the idea is to make an exsanguination cut through the neck below the jawbone. You'll be cutting across the carotid arteroid and the jugular vein, so that the animal will bleed out. And from that point on, it's just a natural case of giving it 24 hours to glycolysize into lactic acid and meat quality.
It's and from an inspection point of view, because a lot of people don't really know this actually, and I'm only going off mine. I haven't done it since, it was 2020, so it's 5 years ago. If I'm wrong, please correct me. That what you're looking for when you cut it open and with the guts and with the ruse, you took out the gut pile, but you kept the liver. I think it was the liver, the heart, I think maybe the kidneys.
Heart, lung, liver, and kidneys.
Yep, there you go. Yep. Yeah. So you keep them in there. You're looking for any discoloration, any lumps, anything like that. And anything like that, it's out.
Yeah. Also, that's the pathology that you're looking for. So you're looking for any abnormality. So it actually starts with the harvester. The harvester has to make an ante-mortem disposition, that's pre-death, through the scope. They've got to look at the animal. Is it alert? Is it bright? Is it looking around? It hasn't got an unsteady gait. It's not drooling. It's a healthy animal. And they can make a disposition at that point. Okay, I'm going to take it. They'll take that animal out, and then once they remove the alimentary tract, which is the whole digestive system, being a ruminant, that can still create heat after death. So you want to be working towards lowering the body temperature as soon as possible after death. Then that comes into the processing plant, and we'll have a preliminary inspection there. to make sure there's no gross contamination that might contaminate the plant, such as ingesta of feces, mud, dirt, seed, etc. Once that animal's been declared, yeah, it's good for processing, it gets a tick, then it'll hang for 24 hours, and then we'll go into the full processing and looking for any physiological abnormalities, which could be cancers, etc. The thing is that the most of the animals that we're harvesting are under 3 years old and have never had the time to develop those sort of pathologies. So that's the first stage. The second stage is I've had talks with an associate professor in parasitology over at Charles Sturt University in Wagga, and he's been doing studies around here for the last 20, 25 years on parasites in the alpine area. And he declares that deer are one of the cleanest animals in the area. Yep. They're not, because they're not native to the place, they don't have a symbiotic with any parasites. You might see some liver fluke, but it's pretty rare. And then there's not much that can affect them. They will be more susceptible to parasites in the first 18 months of their life until their immune system matures. And then as that does, they start to expel anything that's around them.
Yeah, right. Unfortunately, I took one down there in the Snowies, and I think it had liver fluke because it had just spots right through the liver. And obviously, I love the saying, when in doubt, throw it out. But in saying that, the same region, same state forests and whatnot, never had an issue since. So it was, yeah. I mean, look, it happens with everything, and I like the fact that it's not inoculated. Where it's a fresh source that's completely wild. It's organic, like what we used to eat years ago. I mean, obviously not probably Aboriginals because they weren't here, but in different parts of the world, you're completely right that they were. That's what people hunted and lived off, and it's good.
Nature's a brutal selector. If an animal is unwell or ill, it's quickly eliminated from the gene pool, either by a predator or through natural attrition. So what you see in the field, excuse me, is a pretty healthy selection of wild stock that's been delivered by nature versus a farmer saying you live, you die.
How's it been received by the locals? Because there's, I know around speaking to a lot of people, I've got a lot of mates down there. It's my favorite place to go to. I understand why you want to live there because that's the long-term plan for us too. How have you found, I've heard a lot of things around the Jindabyne area and things like that where they're quite prevalent, is that a lot of people moving out from the city are less likely to want them shot because they think they're pretty and don't see the actual whole array of issues that come with them.
Yeah, so good question. So local land services have been conducting helicopter culling, and a lot of people have refused that, particularly the newcomers buying the 100-acre lots. They don't like the idea of a helicopter blowing around and blasting the hell out of everything. But then once they see, I think it comes down to, yes, we do need to control the numbers. We have to have a management system in place. But culling via aerial shooting is extremely expensive, doesn't produce any net worth, and it feeds into other problems, being pigs, foxes, dogs, cats, even the European wasp, which is a protein eater.
How bad are they down there at the moment?
They can be shocking, especially just in autumn when they start to the wasps work out that they've always worked out. They know they have to hibernate. They look for protein and sugar sources, and they just swarm everywhere.
Yep.
And it becomes pretty invasive.
We were down there for the fallow rut. Sorry to cut you off. We were down there for the fallow rut in April, and oh my God, we were talking thousands in the campground. A couple of guys, anyone that brought back a carcass, one of the boys left it next to his tent. Bad move. It had thousands under his little awning. So it's man.
What they're doing is looking for protein sources to the farm in the hive to get them through winter. Very aggressive. Yeah,
makes sense.
So a lot of people are thinking there's got to be a better way than this. Either expensive helicopter culling, whatever. It has an immediate effect momentarily, but it's like shooting a school of fish in the ocean. They just take off and go elsewhere and then come back in and reoccupy that space. So with culling, even if I operated my plant at 10 animals a day for 220 days a year, which is a normal working year with 6 weeks holidays, that would bring in 2,200 bodies into the plant, and we focus on females. They are a better flesh. So that's 2,200 breeders that are taken out. So you might extrapolate that into 2,200 fawns that aren't going to be born next year. if I take it up to a higher end capacity that the plant is capable of, being 50 carcasses a day, that's around 11,000 carcasses. So that's 11,000 deer per annum that are taken out. And then you extrapolate that number into what will be born next year. So I think it's a slower, but over a period of time, a much more effective management process. And I won't be alone in this for very long. I think as people sort of realise what's capable, that then some others might pick up on this and start doing their own thing.
Yep.
I'm not saying this is a silver bullet. It's not going to cure the problem of too many deer, but it is part of the management process.
And I think that's the big one, is that it has to be a multifaceted approach. I think, if
I agree.
if you're a sensible person, you understand that there's a need for all of it. And yes, I'm a hunter, but hunting is not going to solve the problem on its own. Yes, it can
Yeah, right.
contribute 100%, but so can culling in certain forms. And I think that's where we need to be a bit more pragmatic about the approach and what we're pushing for to happen. And that's why I wanted you on here, because I love the idea. I think it's something that I think can be possibly the gateway for it, done in a better manner than the aerial culling and leaving bodies to rot. It puts a better, I guess, I think it's more palatable for the public, which for me is a big thing, because we have so many people scared of firearms and things like that. And I really do feel it's just education, and that, somewhere along
Yeah,
their family tree, their ancestors would have hunted probably not that long ago, only a couple of generations back. And now they're so worried about a firearm. And I get where the public come from for that, but that ability to see, hey, this is a great thing. We're now getting food. It just starts to put all these puzzle pieces together that people might go, why are we spending a lot of damn money on aerial culling? Or why
yeah,
are we actively pursuing poisoning and using 1080 on these when we can eat them? They are delicious, and it's far better, way more humane. As you said, a bullet straight to the head. And that's the only way you can take them. So people need to be clear on that. Unlike
that's
some of the helicopter shooting, which that's not the case. And
it's
then,
that humane, but they're putting an immobilizing shot in first,
correct. Yep.
which is terrible,
Yeah.
which you can imagine what that is, and
Yep.
then they'll start to dispatch the animal.
Yeah. Or in South Australia, how they're using a shotgun. That can't be nice for anything. So there's this whole flow on effect. So I love what you're doing and how you're getting this. And I agree. I think you're probably breaking the ground here, and then that's going to possibly be a flow on effect for others, which I don't necessarily see as a bad thing, because
No,
I think there is a large enough audience, or, consumer base, that once they start to get this protein, it's going to be picked up rapidly. So I think it's great.
definitely. There's a whole ethical process to this as well. We have a problem animal that happens to be a fantastic source of protein, that happens to be very palatable to the human palate. And it literally is, if you were to put forward, say, a vegan argument that you can't be cruel to animals, well, we've got to take this animal out. We can't waste it, and we can also use it, and it's not being wasted. And at the moment, we're just blasting away and just dropping them.
Mm.
We should really be making use of it. It becomes, we're feeding into the economy. So the harvesters are making money, the processing plant's making money, the consumer is receiving a very quality product. There's the halo industries around it. I've got the local metal fabricator down the road. He's putting together 2 new harvesting rigs for guys who are going to start harvesting for me. And then there's the knock-on effect of the restaurants that are using it in the area. It becomes a local provenance product. Then there's all the byproducts that can come out of it, the venison sauces and pies and cannellonis and pastas.
Oh, there's so
Yeah.
much. Yep.
Well, that's one thing, though. The pate, we can't use the offal.
What?
Yeah, because in an abattoir, the offal is removed from the carcass immediately and put into refrigeration.
Yep.
Whereas if you're wild harvesting, that offal might have been attached to the animal for 12 hours maximum before it's under refrigeration. So, understandably,
Right. Okay.
that's a food safe program.
Yeah. Okay. That
But we
makes
can
sense.
turn that into another product which can feed your pets.
Which, it's a win anyway.
So we're using, we're not
Yeah.
wasting it.
Well, hey, listen, it's far better than, aerial culling, where I think you touched on it a little bit before, saying that the animal on the deck is now food source, whether it be foxes, whether it be pigs, especially, they they feed on it. That then contributes to their numbers as a feral species, and that becomes this flow-on effect. And I mean, if any of the ferals out there that you wanted to try and control, pigs are probably the one that you do not want to be giving food sources to, because they can have so many litters and so many piglets throughout a year. I think and they breed so quick. It's ridiculous at how, I think it's like possibly under 12 months off the top of my head, and the sows can start giving birth to litters, and it's like
and their feeding process is highly destructive to the environment in terms of the snout rooting around and pushing up soil.
Yeah. And so I think that, you know, what you're doing from that perspective makes complete sense in saying, hey, not only are we helping out with the problem, but we're going to use it, and we're not going to be contributing to the problem that some other methods do. And that is a concern. So I do really, really like that. And it's an area out down there, especially like with the national parks and the, you know, there's very limited, I should say, amount of control in the national parks. They're safe havens for these animals to really breed into large populations. And then the poor farmers that are surrounding those areas are the ones that cop it. And I haven't been down there. I'm going to be down there very soon because we're doing a snow camp. So hopefully not too much snow, because last time we were down there last winter, we had our camp destroyed by the snow. We had 30 centimeters in 3 hours. It was ridiculous up in the mountains. But then so this one, I'm hoping it will be a no snow camp. But I've heard that there was not much water around down in April. That all the creek beds was very dry. That's obviously impacting feed, which then has to obviously impact farmers, and then having a heap of deer on the landscape, that's not good as well. And then kangaroos, we haven't even touched on them being around as well.
Yeah, look, I empathise with national parks. It is such a vast area that they're required to manage that I don't think any amount of money and resources will achieve the ideological outcomes that have been put on them to achieve the goals that they're expected to maintain. And I will say that there's a lot of locals down here that work for parks. They come off the land, and they're good local people, and got nothing against them, but they are being told what to do by, you know, an ideological
policies
management system, which it's not really. They're looking at the horse from the wrong end.
Yeah,
We could say it's simple as that.
Well, I think they're hamstrung.
Better way. There's always a better way, and I think our harvesting technique will give us better results over a longer period of time. It will be slower, but it will be more effective.
And I think that, as I said before, I think the way that it has the potential to grow, and not just your own, I hope it's obviously very successful for you and it grows, but I think that other people as well in different regions can start to look at this and start to potentially see a similar model going, okay, there's value in it. And I think that's the biggest thing for any species. I constantly hear people say, we've got to wipe them out. We're never getting rid of them. I don't think any feral species anywhere, and I know some people get upset because I didn't call it a game animal, but whatever you want to call it, doesn't really matter. But any introduced species anywhere never gets eliminated. And I think we need to shift the focus, and there's a lot of call for that. I think the focus needs to shift into management and looking at doing something, similar things to what the states do, how they use it a lot more, and they use a combination of methods, and they're, using them as an economical resource, because that is, I think, a win for everybody, and it is going to help the problem out significantly. So that's a win. So when you're talking about selling these things, so I sort of got the vision there. I don't know if you watch it, but I'm a massive fan of Clarkson's Farm, and just finished season 4 and binged that because I absolutely love it. But he's doing something similar in the fact that everything on his farm is and using local sort of ingredients, and he set up his own pub now. Sorry, spoiler alert there, guys, if you haven't watched season 4. But he set up his own pub with the beer he makes, with all the food from the local farmers, and all that sort of thing. Is that the vision for it? Is that most of this is going to be just around the snowies? Are you going to try and expand it and get into different markets, or just snowies at the moment?
Definitely. What Clarkson's done and identified is closing the gap between the primary producer and the city. So it's removing that gap between the chops that you get in a styrofoam package with Glad wrap over the top and a label. It's like, that's a chop. No, it's a sheep, or it's an animal. It lived once and now it's on your plate, or about to be on your plate. It's about recognizing what your food is and eliminating the processing between the raw product and the consumer. And I think we're short-circuiting that gap of the horrible processed food market, which is making Australians and pretty much the Western world unhealthy. We need to get back to these raw foods and simplicity and good health. I was watching it was a small film on the National Film and Sound Archive. It was about the Sydney beaches, and it was post World War II, and it was about 10 minutes long. And 3 minutes into it, I'm looking at all the images. I'm like, there's something really different here, and I realised there's nobody fat. There's not one fat person in these images. So, and this is pre-processed food, pre-cook it yourself, find it yourself, or you wouldn't even. It'd be rare to find a chicken shop back in the day. So, coming back from industrialized food and getting back into our raw and natural food as close to its natural state as possible is going to make us a better, healthier society. And understanding where it comes from.
Oh, look, you touched on a few different things there. I completely agree with. I'm a PE teacher, so very big on physical activity and eating healthy. And I think the whole foods and as close to natural as possible is definitely the best way to go. And I know there's a heap of diets and different names out there that get thrown around, but as you just said, and it makes complete sense. I don't know if you've ever seen the image. There's the world's fattest man that used to be like in the circus. He was the person to look at. If you saw the size of him, and I've shown my students this because it's unreal. I think it was about 1950s, 1960s. Mate, he's not even like he's not even big compared to a lot of people these days. And you're sitting there just going, what happened? How did we get to this sort of point? And I completely agree. It has to be the change in diet. It has to be the fact that we're all the processed or ultra processed food that we're consuming and the sugar and all the crap that comes with it and preservatives and things like that. And it's really interesting because I obviously spend a lot of time with my students, especially their senior years, unpacking like the AIHW, Australian Institute for Health and Welfare, and looking at the data and the cancer rates and all those. And there are significant changes, and it has to be to diet has to be one of the biggest ones there because you see this big shift and there's got to be a reason. And when you think about casting back, as you just said, I've seen some of the footage there and the noise compared to now. And you're
Yeah.
right, that the levels of obesity aren't there.
Let me fire a question back to you. Question without notice about your
Yeah, go for it.
students. What is their understanding of food these days? I mean, I remember when I was, in school age, what food was and how we procured it, prepared it, made it. You had a veggie shop down the road. You had the butcher. There was a greater variety of choices. And today, they're pretty much funneled into a supermarket. What are kids thinking about nutrition today?
Look, I think it is a tricky one because they are sold from such a young age and they get, especially up here in Sydney, they get addicted because, as an example, my school where I teach is we've done a count and within 5 kilometre radius of the school, I think we worked it out to be something like 16 fast food takeaway stores. And it's just
Very good.
oversaturated compared to, I think there's like one Coles in there at period. Or maybe it's Woolies, but it is so oversaturated for this fast food, quick takeaway sort of food. And look, there is multiple factors to that. I work in a low socioeconomic status area. They are heavily targeted by those industries because people are working multiple jobs, are very time poor, or actually don't know how to cook and do that.
Yeah, that's a good thing too.
That is a very big thing. I find that a lot with the kids. Look, my kids are brilliant. I do thoroughly enjoy working with my lot, and they probably are at a little bit of an advantage in the sense they know what I do. I'm very open that I do hunt, and I'm very open that I supply my own food. And we were even talking about my year 11 class. We were taught. I teach health and movement science. And we were talking about health advocacy and talking about advocating and changing, the school canteen. And imagine, because we've got an
Yeah,
agricultural plot, and I was like, imagine if we were able to, have our own cattle, and then we grow their own veggies, and there was an offset if you stayed back after school and you tended to the gardens and worked with the cattle. And then when we processed it all and it all went straight into the canteen, there'd be this offset that we're eating better. You might get half price food, like to work out how we could, make good changes and across the landscape. They are a little bit more in a better spot because I talk to them about what happens. But in saying that, I have had many people, not just students, many people that have had that sort of light bulb moment where we're talking about the ribs, and they've worked out that the ribs that we eat are the ribs of an animal. And they're like, oh, what? Huh? And we're talking people that are 20, 25.
you're right.
Yeah, like it sort of blows my mind, and
We
I
put
always,
they put the meat on the bone.
well, yeah, and you know what? It's funny because you've probably seen those memes on social media where there's a person saying, "Why do you need to, hunt animals or harvest animals? We can just go to Coles and buy it." And unfortunately, I have met many people that actually are on that wavelength and that they just don't understand. And I think you mentioned before that disconnection, and I've spoken about it on here before. Is that I remember when I was very little, you'd go to a butcher and you'd see the animals hanging up. Now you don't. I think you mentioned it before. They have nice little pictures, and usually they put some nice, greenery, kale, and whatever it might be,
It's
and present
something
that
that
way
yeah,
to make it sort of that softer, less, I don't know, less approach of seeing where your food comes from. And I
kind of
actually think that's
think about it.
well, and I think that's a problem. And I think that when we're not seeing that, and I think that look, when we teach about nutrition, I don't think we go into the depth. And then in fairness, there's a lot of people that probably don't see this side. Like I know amongst my colleagues, they're always very eager to talk to me about what I do, and for me to cook something up and share a meal with them or something, because that's not they're so disconnected from that they can't believe that I know how to do X, Y, Z, because they wouldn't. It's fascinating. Oh, I think we've really been taken out of the food chain and for so long, and been so reliant on just the process that we can go down the local supermarket and purchase whatever, not see any images of animals, and sort of not see it. I hassle my wife a lot because she's one of those people. She loves the venison, loves the food, but she doesn't want to have any part of seeing an animal dead or cutting it up. And I get that. And there's a lot of people out there, hey, that's fine. But I do think that it's something that is impacting the broader society as well.
I think, as you're saying, it's the big companies that are making food in the supermarket. They don't want you to think about where it comes from. They well, rather you didn't. I think if you're going to put anything in your body, be it a liquid or a chemical or just your food, you want to be really conscious about what it is and where it's come from and what it might or might not do to you. And I think if you look into natural food products, you'd be quite happy to use those versus an industrialized food process.
Oh, look, 100% agree. A recent study just came out, and they I can't remember the sample size, but they were talking about changing the diet of students that presented or had ADHD. And the two figures, don't quote me exactly, but I know it was 59% and 67%. And I think it was when the diet was changed and processed foods was eliminated in the control group, 67% of those students had zero ADHD signs and
Yeah,
symptoms
right.
just on that food change. Then I think it was the 59% when reintroduced with processed foods, redeveloped their actions and behaviors that were signs and symptoms of ADHD. That is fascinating because I sit there and I look at that going, okay, that's diet. That would, for me, it makes a lot of sense because there's a lot of students, a lot of kids these days that are, have ADHD diagnosis. And that is something that's probably coming and quite closely linked to our diets and the shift in our diets over the last 30, 40 years, to such an ultra processed thing. And you see it in supermarkets. You walk in, there's very limited. If you take notice, and anyone out there listening, take notice when you walk into a supermarket of what percentage you think is probably organic or actual just whole foods, because you'd be shocked at what percentage. Like, you think about just the aisles alone, most of the aisles, unless you're in the fruit and veggie section or in the meat or the milk, and even to the cheese, to extent the dairy for a little bit there, but the rest is all ultra processed foods, like very limited amount. It's pretty scary.
Even what appears to be raw product in our supermarkets has been stored, like apples could be stored up to 3 years
Yep.
and then regassed, bananas, avocados, which is why we see this modern day thing of you take this beautiful apple home from the supermarket and within 3 days it's going brown and the poor thing is dying.
Yeah.
It's been stored for so long just to maintain an appearance.
Well, the other thing that concerns me is that the things like bananas with the ripening agents and things like that. But then we have our own little garden here, and we probably eat, I reckon, close to 50, 60% of our own produce. Never going to get to 100%, just the, locality, what you can grow, etc., etc. But I sort of look at the battles that we have with your birds, your snails, slugs, mice, the whole lot that you're constantly battling. We don't use any
Definitely need
chemicals.
chickens.
Well, we got them too. But my wife would, if she could have 100, she'd have 100. We've got them, and they're a little bugger too because they get into the garden and eat our, the spinach. They just destroy our food as well.
All right.
Yes, but they're great. And then we've surrounded by farms, and you see all the farms, and they don't get hit by bugs at all. And that has to be coming from the insecticides and pesticides that they're spraying on that to keep the animals off. And then I always start to think, how that can't be good for us to consume. Like it's that flow-on effect. I think you're right. Everything that you put into your body, there has to be an offset. And the more it's processed, or the more chemicals that potentially are involved in the process, the worse it has to be for us.
Yeah, we're sort of we're swimming against the tide instead of with it. Like what I see in a healthy garden is if I see ladybugs around, it's like this place is pretty good. Those tiny little, very colourful little predators are smashing all of the destructive bugs.
Yeah, and I think it's time though. I look at it and go, geez, it's time consuming to be able to grow your own garden and process your own meat and all things like that is a time consuming process.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people, especially if you're in corporate jobs or long hour jobs, and then you got a family, and it's this flow on, and then you're trying to add in there being physically active and doing some sort of training and things like that. It's more about time management, and people are time
Very
poor
much.
these days. And so I understand, and I'm never, I hope it doesn't come across that way that I'm putting people down that go to Macca's or things like that, because I get it. I completely understand where they're coming from, but it's not the right way that we as a society should be looking at what are better models or better ways to do it, because the flow-on effects have to be better. But then you look at it and go, well, it's very hard because the costs. And one of the things about Clarkson's farm is he had all this local produce, but I can't remember the example they used, but one was like £100 a kilo versus the imported overseas ones, which was £10 a kilo. And I think it was pepper. Anyway, don't quote me on what that was, but that is something like, oh my God. And, and then people don't think about the cost, how much it takes, insurance. And I'm sure you're well aware of this about insurance, setting up 2 rigs, then you're talking about what you're paying workers, superannuation, like there's just tax, GST, there's so many things that come about it that you can't offer a product very cheaply because of the ongoing cost, but they are also economic contributors, which is a good thing.
Yeah, look, I reckon in a very holistic sense, in a perfect world, the government can be incentivized to create a pathway of tax incentives to create better quality food, which will have a health effect on the nation, which will lower health costs. Of course, I'm speaking very ideologically here as I sip from my Japanese beer. But once again, there are better ways to do things, and we need to be more aware and open to looking at things and not just digging our heels in and saying this or that. It's not black or white. There are better ways, multitudes of them. What's going to work within that area of society, that region, that city. I totally understand an urban dweller. They're not going to raise their own goats and vegetables. It's not possible. But how can we bring our rural environment to them at an economic cost and at the highest possible quality?
And I think there's never going to be a perfect solution in anything that we do. And it's about trying different approaches and that have some sort of benefit, or at least multiple benefits, such as what you're doing is that you're employing locals, you're doing a service in the area for trying to manage numbers, you're getting high quality product coming out of the end of it. That high quality product is being used locally. That showcases off the restaurants for people that are traveling down there, because tourism is such a big part of the way of life down there. And it's that flow-on effect that a lot of people don't see, and they just go, dear, bad, shoot. And I think that's probably an education thing. And I think that we probably need more people out there advocating all these different ways and doing a better job of educating the standard public who are not engaged or involved or have any idea about this. Hell, I still have people go, this deer in Australia, and it's like, where have you been living? Have you not traveled outside Sydney? I mean, even in Sydney, there's plenty of them around too. do. But they have that opinion because they just haven't been exposed to that sort of, area. And that's what I always feel for the poor farmers, because they've got such a population or a customer base that just don't know what they do. They don't know the hardships. They don't know the hours. They don't know the constant stresses that they're under from a variety of things like weather, competition for food, you name it.
But they know Elon Musk blows up rockets to go forward with his planning and stuff. But
Going to Mars.
yay.
Yeah.
Wait till he goes. None of us are coming with you, mate.
Well, it's that social media thing. I think that's the biggest problem, is that, for a lot of people, what they see on social media is just they wholly and solely buy it. It's one of those big things. So I get it. It's a hard thing to break. And I don't think we ever will. It'd be nice if we could. You know what? I think AI is going to be a big change for that. I think that AI, I know I'm using it a lot more, and definitely in my job. And it's doing wonderful things, such as differentiating texts and things like that for different levels of reading ability, and things that I would have taken me 20 hours to do a 1 hour lesson. Now it does in 30 seconds. It is unreal. So I think that's going to be a good thing. And then potentially assisting people in sifting through some of the things that are out there. So I'm fascinated to see where all that goes and how that impacts, what that impacts in sort of jobs and things like that. Because I actually think what jobs like what you're creating down there are probably the ones that will survive. I constantly say, I can see, there's a UK school already that have opened up and they're fully AI teachers. And I can see, and it's private school, I think they pay like $40,000 a year to go. It's been very interesting. I'm watching that space to see how that plays out, because I can see a lot of jobs getting removed very, very quickly. But the hands-on jobs and the jobs such as food and things like that, I think there's definitely going to be the longevity in that, unless we go down the path of the fake meat and making meat, which I just think is insane.
Yeah, I think we've gone down that path and we're already retreating from it. It just doesn't appear to be a viable thing. Again, with all of the manufactured faux, like, why, if you're going to make a vegetable product, why would you call it sort of fake bacon? When the shelves were bare, that whole section was like, everything's still there. No one's buying it.
Well, I think people get it. I'm more concerned, like the one I really have is the stuff that, I don't know if you've seen. Have you seen the steaks that they make? And it's like they 3D print it, and you can pick your level of marbling and fat. Look, it's quite, I'll send you the link to it, because it's quite like, holy crap. But what the hell is in it? I don't know. Just watching a 3D print and just going, what the hell are they using? I don't want a bar of that. Like, I don't know. I like a lot of studies and a lot of knowing things, and I don't know what's in that. I don't want to touch it. Which is the beautiful thing about organic or natural. I shouldn't say organic, because there's varying terms for that. But like just the natural meat. If you go out, you see that deer, you see that they're healthy, you eat it, happy days. So, mate, this is in the early stages. So how long has this been up and running? How long you've been going? Because I've seen a couple of, I think you're on, was it the ABC? There was a story on there.
Yeah, we've had some great support. The Land newspaper, Radio 2SM, had a great chat with Chris Smith there. ABC Radio has been following what I've been doing, and I've got a whole bunch of people who want to do follow-up stories. I'm going to send journalists out with the harvester, do the process plan, and then end up at the restaurateur's place and literally follow the whole process from paddock to plate. Learn about the eating qualities of venison.
I love it. I think that's, as I said before, the way to people is through their stomachs. And I think, watching, whether it be Clarkson's Farm, Paddock to Plate, there's lots of great things. Gordon Ramsay, all these people that are really getting out there and showing the whole process and the line. I think that's the best thing for everybody, so that people pick up education, cooking, you name the whole thing. So the publicity so far from what I've been seeing has been really positive, and even, seeing Facebook posts and things like that, which is great to see, because when I knew it was in the Snowies area and hearing quite a few stories, especially around the Jindy area, said the newcomers and that, I was like, I wonder how this is going to go. Is he going to get a lot of heat or hatred? Because that has happened occasionally, but it's good to see that it's being positively received.
I haven't had any negative words that I've heard of about the process and what I'm doing. Even animal rights advocates are like, yeah, we have a problem, but that's a better way to handle it than just blowing them up from a helicopter. Local support has been fantastic. The older families are very supportive. They want us on their land to work with them. We're going to work in a rotational effect, so we can intensively work different regions and keep moving around in that constant flow. It won't eliminate the problem. Even parks have said it's an endemic problem now. It's not going to go away, but we've got to work on systems that will manage the numbers so that it won't decimate our native flora and fauna,
Yep.
and that we can keep those numbers in check, make use of them, and benefit across the board.
It makes complete sense. What do you go after? Just fallow deer, or are you sort of open up to, like, I know Samba and Reds are down that area too? Is it
Yeah.
just you're particularly targeting one species, or you don't mind?
So our predominant species here is fallow.
Yep.
Further south you go, you'll find more Samba, more red. And we are getting Samba and red starting to come up into the area. For market viability, for just reliability, I'm focusing on fallow female particular weight range, so that we're able to reproduce that product so that a chef or anyone says, I want a backstrap, 1 kilo, and it's about that diameter, and I can turn that into so many meals for my restaurant. We want to have that repeatability of that size backstrap again and again and again.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Continuity and
Yeah.
consistency.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, look, my palate isn't as, I guess, good because I struggle to taste the difference between species, but I consistently get told that they are very different in table fare. Look, yeah, I don't know. I can't tell, but I think it's all delicious. So it makes sense that that flavor is going to keep consistent as well. Mate, well, look, love what you're doing down there. I think it's a really good thing, and I'm excited to see where it goes. There's so many benefits to it. So I really appreciate you coming on the show and having a chat with us, and I wish you all the best with going forward with the business.
Thanks very, very much, Matt. It's been a terrific talk with you. Thanks for having me on your program, and I look forward to talking to you again down the track and see how we're going.
Yeah, definitely, and I hope to see that you've expanded like crazy and it's going great guns, which I'm sure it will.
Thanks, mate.
All right, guys, thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time. Bye for now.